Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be with you. And it is wonderful to start out this great summery day with a super fun project that we're going to be making together. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We have people here from North Carolina. Hi, Miss Deidre. Hello, Indiana, Michigan, Nebraska, and Texas. Holy cow, Missouri, Oklahoma. This is so much fun. This is a project that we designed here at my girlfriend's quilt shop, and it was part of a skyscraper series. And what's fun about this is that every month of the year, we have a different skyscraper. Now, we call it a skyscraper because it's nice and tall and it's going to fit perfectly like on a small wall or on your door if you wanted to. And so every month we have a different one. And this time we thought, you know what, let's do something a little bit different. Let's team up with one of my favorite people on the planet, and that is Miss Becky Thompson. Becky, are you there?
I am. I am. Hi.
Hey,
how's everyone doing?
how are
It's
you?
good to see everybody.
It's great to see you. Oh my goodness. So we have a lot of our friends here from my girlfriend's quilt shop. And then we have a lot of friends that I haven't met yet before from who follow you over at Power Tools with Thread.
Yes. Yeah. And I promoted it this morning on a live again. And my emails, every time you guys sign up, I get an email when you use that link. So there are so many of you here, and I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your day, whether you're watching it live right now or you're catching the replay. So, and I love, Chris, that you guys are doing a replay. You're going to put it so people can watch it later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's really important to us is that, you know, we know that people's lives are busy. Some of you may be working. Some of you will may be working, but are playing a little hooky too, right? Am I right? Anyone, does that apply to? Or you just are super busy with just something called life, right? And so it's nice to be able to come in when you can. If you need to leave, that's okay too. We totally understand it. We get it. And so that's why it's important to have this recorded. You can go back to it at any time. Donna says, no, lunch. There you go. Or you have lunch. Exactly. That's always a good thing as well. All right. So we're super happy to have you here. Now, some of you may be sewing along and some of you may choose not to sew along. So either way is totally fine. So by raise of hand, who out there is going to be sewing along with us today? Okay, so I'm seeing a few of you, and Becky's going to be sewing along with me today. Sweet. So you're going to hear a little, some thoughts and tips and tricks from myself, and then you're also going to hear some from Becky as well. So I'm super excited that we can collaborate on this class for you together today. So if you haven't received your kit yet, don't you worry. It's on its way, and very excited to be able to have you start that as soon as it arrives. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look first at what exactly are we making. And I should also mention that, some of you may have decided to get on and think, you know what, I might want to do this, but I want to look at it first. I want to see how easy is this to do. How difficult is it to do? And maybe I'll decide if I want to purchase that kit later. It's not too late to do that. So if you take a look, we are doing sewing applique. Yes, my friends, all of my machine embroiderers out there, you're hating on Chris right now, right? Like, really, Chris? We have to do sewing? Becky, you raised your hand?
Well, so I know a lot of people know how I roll, and I absolutely detest having to stitch, stop, turn. And so yesterday, went through my pieces with the scan and cut, and then create
Ah,
a digital embroidery design for each one of the applique pieces. And so I will be embroidering those on and
okay.
embroidering. And I am actually recording this as well. There's a camera right behind my laptop, and I'm recording this as
Uh-huh.
well. And then I'm going to put
Okay.
it out later on my channel, and it'll have the
Okay.
exact how-tos that I made all of those steps.
Nice. Perfect. Well, that sounds way fun. I love that. Yeah, I know that Dee, she's a great customer of ours, and she had done hers on using IQ Designer and on her machine and was able to digitize that as well. So whether you do it digitally or you do it manually with the sewing machine, we're going to both be able to share some tips with you today on exactly how this all comes together. And it really is a lot of fun. And I will tell you, you know me, I love machine embroidery, absolutely love it. But there are also times that I absolutely love just to do it by my sewing machine. It's to me, I find it very relaxing. So I hope that if you're going, you know what, I'm just not sure, be open to the idea of doing it either, by sewing machine or embroidery machine. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. So this is how it all comes together. This is the finished piece. The first part that we are doing is going to be, we're going to talk about how to do these little 4-pointed stars. I like to call them friendship stars. That's kind of a traditional name of that block. And it is made up of half square triangles. So let's take a look and see how this is done. And then Becky, of course, you can pipe in anytime and let me know if there's something you want to share as well with our audience today.
Oh, you're driving the
All
train,
right.
lady.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right. So when it comes time to do this, you have your cutting instructions right in front of you, and that's going to let you know exactly what to cut from each of the fabrics. And if you purchased a kit from us, you might go, wow, I have a lot of extra fabric left. Yes, we're pretty generous in our kits. So you may have enough to make almost 2 out of this.
Yes.
All right, so let's get a little bit closer look at my cutting mat right here. I'm going to take one of my 2.5-inch squares and put it right side up, and I'm going to take another 2.5-inch white square. And the goal here is that I want to have 2 half square triangles, right? So one way of doing that is I could draw a diagonal line straight from corner to corner, and then I would have to go 1/4 inch, so 1/4 inch on both sides. And that's very, very doable. One of the tools that I absolutely love, I don't know if you've seen this, Becky, is the Quilter's Magic Wand. Have you ever used something like this?
I use it all the time. I find this to be much more
Yeah.
accurate than
Mm-hmm.
trying to draw the line from corner to corner. Well, not trying,
Mm-hmm.
drawing the line from corner to corner and then trying to get 1/4 of an inch away. It is much more accurate to put this corner to corner and then sew on the line that you just drew.
Definitely. Definitely. I would totally agree with you. And so the nice thing about this magic wand is you have that lasered line down the center that you're matching up, and then you just simply quickly draw your lines. So when I do a bunch of half square triangles, I will just quickly draw all these on at once, and then I will go to the sewing machine. So we're going to just do one block together today. So I've drawn my lines, and now let's head over to the sewing machine. All righty. Let's wake this baby up. Here we go. And I'll put my presser foot down and begin to stitch. Whoops, I'm missing my foot pedal. Well, that's okay. I will go ahead and use the old-fashioned way of, well, not even the old-fashioned way, maybe the way that a lot of people love to do this is just using the start-stop button on their machine. Are you a start-stopper or do you like the foot pedal, Becky?
I prefer the foot pedal I use on my piecing machine, but I didn't connect it on
Mm-hmm.
my Luminaire, so I'm using the start stop button as well. Now, I want to share a viewer sent me this little black
Okay.
light flashlight. Can you guys see that? And I want to give you guys a tip. If you're ever
Hmm.
working with white on white and it's real hard to see which way is the correct side of the fabric, you can use, let me see if you can get close enough to where you guys can see it. You can use a black light and you can see that's the right side because I can see in the black light, and then there's no print on the back. So I
Hmm.
use a lot of white on white. And I just love that Kay, one of my viewers, sent this to me and told me all about this. So
That's
I
awesome.
to my sewing machine to make sure that I get the white on white, the right side right all the time.
There you go. The right side right. I like that. That's great. That's a great little tip. I've never seen one of those before. All right, so I'm now back at my cutting mat, and you're going to see that if I were to open it up, I've got a half square triangle here and a half square triangle right here. All right, so what I need to do is just cut it down the center. Okay, and I'm left with 2 half square triangles there and 2 more here, which gives us a total of 4 half square triangles, which is exactly what we need to have for our little friendship star. Now, before we open this up though, one of the things that we want to do is we want to trim this down to be a 2-inch half square triangle. And there's a lot of different ways of doing this. And what oftentimes you'll find is that a lot of people will actually open it up first, press it open, and then they trim it up to 2.5 or to 2 inches. I actually prefer not to. I actually like to keep my half square triangle closed before I open it up, and then I measure the 2 inches off of my sewn line here. Now I'm going to show you a couple different ways that of how you can do this. And the first way is just with a regular ruler. Okay, so you don't need any special tool to do this. You just need your regular ruler, and I'm going to show you exactly how that's done. And then I'm going to show you a different way, which I find to be even easier. And many of you, if you've taken classes from me before, you know how much I love this other ruler. But let's take a look and see what's happening here. And I've got Eric who is filming, and so shout out to him and Abby. Thank you guys. And let's see if we can come right up here to the cutting mat, Eric, and let's get a nice up close shot of this right here. So if you're doing it with a regular ruler, what you want to do is you want to find the 2-inch marking on the right and the 2-inch marking on the left. Now you notice I switched around because all of a sudden I realized I had a 1/2-inch ruler I was working with up here at the top. If you've got rulers like that, you want to make sure you're using the 1-inch markings. So I'm going to turn this over here. So I've got 1, 2, and the little black line for that 2 is going to fit directly on my sewn line. Now, remember, it's not on the outside edge of this piece. It's actually on the sewn line, the stitch line. And I'm going to do the same thing over here with the 1, 2, and have it be done that way as well. So we'll go 1, 2, and 1, 2 over here. And you notice that it's just a little smidgen off to the right and over to the left. I like to say we're just giving it a little trim, just a little haircut. And now I have a perfect 2-inch half square triangle before I even have to open it up. All right. Now, when we open it up, you're also going to notice that you have little dog ears coming off of the ends. You could trim those now if you want. One of the things that I like to do, I personally call it the Superman cut. The reason why I call it the Superman cut is because it looks like the Superman emblem, right, on his chest. And when I do that and open it up, no more dog ears. All right. So that's how you do it with a regular ruler. And of course, if you have any questions, please, please, please let me know in the comments and we'll be happy to answer them. So let me go ahead and show one more time the regular ruler. Okay, for those of you following along, again, I'm going 2 inches down and 2 inches over, and I'm resting those lines on the sewn line. Okay, so 1, 2, and I just got to finagle this a little bit. There we go. Oh, over there and over there. Okay, so it's like you're creating this imaginary diagonal on your ruler. That's what you're picturing this to be. All right. And there we go, a little trim. And I'm going to do my Superman cut and no dog ears. And here we go. Okay, so I've got 2 half square triangles done. Now let me show you one of my favorite rulers out there, and that's the Tucker trimmer. How many of you own the Tucker trimmer? Any of you out there have this? This is the Tucker. Do you have yours? Isn't it awesome?
It is.
There's lots of half square triangle rulers out there on the market. I've used several of them. This one just happens to be my favorite, and it sounds like Becky, you love it as well.
Chris,
Looks
are
like
you
Jennifer's got
using
one, and so does Laurel.
trimmer A or trimmer B?
I'm going to actually be using Tucker Trimmer 1.
Ah.
Tucker Trimmer 1 is what this one is called. Okay, I am putting it on a rotating mat. You really can do it without a rotating mat. I find it very simple to do a rotating mat, but I also like the pink behind it. I think you'll see it a little bit better on camera this way. So with the Tucker trimmer, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Here on the other side, you've got the 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and so forth. Remember when I talked about having this imaginary line on your regular ruler going from the 2 to the 2? Well, on this one, that imaginary line is already drawn for me. All I have to do is place the 2 on that line and I'm ready to cut. Okay, and again, notice that I haven't opened it up yet.
On mine, I'm using trimmer B, and that one works fine. So you can trim, because mine came in a set with an A and a B. So you just
interesting.
Right on the seam line, trim on the triangle point, and then cut off the dog ears because it has little slots for you.
Nice. I love that too. Those little slots can come in handy for sure. Okay, so there we go. We have 4 half square triangles all made. Yeah, Judy uses the quilt in a day ruler, works good too. Absolutely. In fact, the quilt in a day is another ruler that I love. And I use both of them kind of like it doesn't matter. It's just whichever one I have ready right there to go. Quilt in a day, but I do love the Tucker trimmer. This is also great for making quarter square triangles, which are like your hourglass blocks. All right, come with me over to the ironing station now. And I'm going to press these open. And we want to press towards the dark side. So before I press it open, I like to give it a little heat. That's called setting the seam. The reason why we set the seam is it just sometimes when blocks go through our machines, sometimes they can get a little just, a little discombobbled, a little, just a titch. And so that just kind of keeps everything even, and it's brings all those fibers together, your threads, your fabric on top, your fabric on bottom. It's a nice clean slate, I like to say. All right, so I just get into the habit of setting the seam. Again, it's just a little bit of heat. I open it up, and then with the toe of my iron, I'm just going to kind of wiggle that out, but then we want to get in the habit of pressing, not stretching, right? Stretching is a no-no when it comes to pressing our blocks.
I love that Riley Blake has come out with some new clappers because I've started using those and my my accuracy has just skyrocketed on my,
Really?
because I'm using a clapper, and it prevents what I would call the back roll, where once you iron it flat and it cools, it might try to roll back up on that seam, and the clapper prevents that. Yeah, it's wonderful.
That. Yeah, those wooden clappers, it takes a nod from the early days with tailoring clothes, and they would use, the wooden clappers, right? And now we're using it many times in our sewing, which definitely leads to a nice flat seam.
Yeah.
All right. So then now, go ahead.
Wonderful. Yeah, they turn out just beautiful. I have just started using that again. And I'm a garment seamstress. That's where I started. So it's been a nice. It was one of those. I saw Lori Holt using it in one of her videos, and I was like, why didn't I think of that?
Right. Isn't that the truth? I always think, oh, wow, why didn't I think of that? Because I'll tell you, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea for sure. All right. So you can see here that I put together a puzzle. Oh, can I show how to use the clapper? I don't know if I have one handy. Do you have one handy there?
I do. Yeah. So it's very simple. And if you don't throw your iron around, it's really great. Crash. So I like to keep this little Cricut mini press next to my ironing board. This is a Steady Betty, and I have some little mini ironing tools here. But this thing wants to fall. So all you do is just press the seam, just like Chris showed. And as soon as you just leave it on there, a couple of seconds, and then take your clapper and just hold it. You don't have to hold it tight. You don't need a lot of pressure. And you definitely just want, to use a clapper that is designed for garment sewing, or fabrics sewing, because it absorbs the moisture that's in your environment. If you live in a humid area, or if there's any kind of moisture at all in the fabric, and it just makes your fabric sew flat. This is untreated wood, so I don't recommend. Be very careful. Don't just grab a block of wood out of your husband's shop or whatever, because
not a good idea.
Yeah, that's important.
Right. Yes, definitely.
Seconds, and it's good.
Perfect. Thanks, Becky, for that demo. All right. Let's see. Yeah, great wool pressing mats. Definitely, Ginger. You're right. Yes. And Mark says that he has one from 1930. Oh, that's amazing. I love that. All right. Well, let's take a look back at the friendship star in front of us. You're going to notice now we have like a 9 patch, right? We're used to doing 9 patches as quilters, where you're going to sew one row together, the second row together, and the third one, and then you bring them all together, right? Well, that's what we're going to do here. However, I'm going to show you one of my favorite little tricks I like to do when it comes to doing 9 patches, and that is I'm going to chain piece the entire block at the same time. Okay, so you ready to see how that works? Let me give you a kind of a nutshell of how this is going to happen, and then we're going to take it to the machine. I'm going to first put, right sides together here, and sew a 1/4 inch seam, and then I will just continue to chain piece, which means that we're not cutting our threads in between. We're just continue sewing. This is a great, efficient way of being able to get blocks done even faster. So I'll do this one, and then I'll do this one. And then I actually won't even cut in between. I'll go back. Now this will be together, and this is still hanging on, and now I can add my third piece over. So let me show you. You'll get a better idea of what that means. And thank you, Abby. Abby just brought me the tailor's clapper here from Riley Blake. You can see it's this one right here. Nice and big and solid and heavy. So this would be a tailor's clapper, which is awesome. All right. So, and again, that's from Riley Blake. All right, so I'm going to head over to the sewing machine now, and bring all my pieces with me. Love when I have a nice extension table here, right? To just lay them all out on. All right, so I don't get these all mixed up. So you'll just want to follow the diagram just like a puzzle where you're putting all of these pieces. We want to double check, make sure your little half square triangles are going in the right direction. All right, so I'm going to start with the first one and bring these two together, right sides together. And let me make sure I have my 1/4 inch seam allowance on. Let me change this to a 1/4 inch. There we go. All right. Now, if you're brand new to piecing and you don't feel comfortable with doing the chain piecing like I'm going to be, you certainly can do these one at a time. Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. All right. I'm going to now stitch the next row, the first two of the next row. And now I'm going to take the last row and do that as well. Let me bring this up to the camera. There we go. And I'll put right sides together and stitch down that row. All right, trim my threads. At the end, you're going to notice now I have this little banner here that, let's see, let me bring that down a little bit. And you can see that I'm not going to trim in between. I'm just going to let this dangle just like this. All right, with that in place, now what I can do is add the third block onto each row. Again, if this is something that you're going, whoa, 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 Chris, this is just a little too much for me. It's totally fine. You can do them one at a time, absolutely. And then now I'm going to add that third little block on, okay? So I stop there. My pieces are still dangling in the wind over here. All right. I have a second row that I'm going to add my third block onto. And now I have my third row that I'll add the third block onto. Again, right sides together, and you're going down using a 1/4 inch seam allowance to the right. Okay, now you may be thinking to yourself, oh, okay, now this is where I'm going to cut them apart, right? We've got these now dangling, 3 rows, all dangling together. Is this where I cut it? Maybe, if you want to, but you don't have to. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep that intact, and I'm not even going to press these yet. I'm going to manually tell my seams where I want them to go. So you're going to see the first row and the second row. I put them right sides together, and I'm going to make sure that my seams are nesting up against one another. So what that means is that one seam is going one direction, the second seam is going the opposite direction. And then you can just butt up those seams, and you don't even have to use a pin. All right. So we're going to sew these all together now.
Well, I'm not that good. I use pins. I don't.
And there is nothing wrong with that, for sure. So it's totally what you feel comfortable doing. But with a block this small, you really truly can feel. You can feel it with your fingers. And sometimes what happens is when we use pins, it's almost like this false sense of security. Look, we've got perfect points there. And sometimes it can actually shift our fabrics when we don't want it to shift our fabrics, but it just does. But I have perfect points. But I did it by the feel of it, of those two butting up against each other. So now I have the first 2 rows done, and now I'm going to add on my last row. So I just go ahead and put right sides together again, and my seam is going one direction, so that means the next row has to go the opposite. So I'm just going to come right here. I can feel it with my fingers that they're butting up against each other. And then I sew it. But yes, 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 if you want to use pins, you absolutely can do that. One of the ways when I do use pins, and I do often use pins for different projects, it just kind of depends on the project I'm doing. But one of the things that I recommend is actually when you are, let's see, let me get my seams going the right direction. When you are using pins, one of the tips I like to share is that I actually like to have them go at a diagonal. So it's going from one seam on one side of the seam opposite to the second side of the seam at a diagonal. But there we go. All right, here we go. And ta-da! My little 4-pointed star is complete. Yay! Oh, Melinda says she's going to give this a try. You know what? It is kind of fun to try. You have 3 opportunities to get it right on this project, right? And so if you're like, you know what, I've never tried that technique before, I'm going to give it a try. You go for it and see if it works. And maybe it will be way too frustrating for you, or maybe you might end up learning something that you actually really like to do, right? You never know. And
Well,
now I give this a nice press.
And it worked out perfect. Look at that.
Yay!
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. Sometimes just feeling it can actually give you a better, here we go. Here's this, sorry, there we go. Can actually give you a better, just a better, more success, I should say, in having it done with perfect points. Feeling it makes a huge, huge difference. Promise you that. All right, friends, looks like I'm ready to go ahead and add this block now through the magic of television, right, Becky? You and I both have a couple blocks already done.
Yay!
So I sewed these up last night, and you will notice that there's a little strip of fabric in between. So I'm going to turn this around because I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. The directions are in there as to what to cut these to be at. And now all I have to do is add the 3rd block. Donna says she loves doing it this way. Nice, Donna. I'm so glad. Yeah, some of you may have been doing this for a long time. Some, this may be a brand new technique for sure. So if you've never tried it, give it a try. Let me know what you think. All right, so I'm just going to quickly add this one on.
Do you have any advice on how to put the stars based on that?
Any advice on how to do what, Becky?
On how to put the stars based on their color. So dark to light, light to dark, does it matter?
You know what? I don't. But I think if I were to do this again, I would have probably put my lighter one in the middle.
Well, then I don't have my.
If you don't have your strips on yet, then that's what I would do. Now you're going to notice I have a little bit of variance here. I'm going to go ahead and just give this a little quick trim over here at the cutting table. And making sure to not cut off my points. I just want to be about a 1/4 inch above the point. And do just a small hair of a trim. Nice. Now I love the way that looks. All right. So what questions do we have so far? Deidre said, I like the idea that you can make your seams go the way you want them. A lot of times I have to change one to a different direction because I press before sewing together. Exactly, Deidre. That's exactly right. And so I find myself doing the same thing because sometimes I've done it in the wrong direction, right? Now, I will tell you this. Here's another tip for you. If you find yourself that you have gone in the wrong direction with a seam and you've already sewn it and you're like, dagnabbit, why is that going that way? Again, you tell that seam who's boss. It's you. And you know what I do? I take a little pair of scissors and I will cut into that seam, just perpendicular, right into it, not cutting the stitches. You cut into it and then you force that seam to go the way you want it to go. Has anyone ever done that? It's a great little tip that sometimes we think, oh no, I can't do that. That's against the rules. Oh no, there's no rules in this. So let me give you an example here. If you're like, what is she talking about? All my seams are going the way I want them to right now. But let's pretend for a moment that I wanted this seam to go this way. Okay, it was supposed to go the opposite way. Can we come up a little closer on the camera for that? Awesome, thank you. All right, let's say this should go this way. All hope is not lost, folks, because all you have to do is, again, you're taking the scissors, and someone said they did it yesterday. That's right. And you tell it who's boss. You give it just a little cut at the tip right there. And then see how it just now folds over? So nice. Donna is saying, eek. Does that scare you, Donna? I promise it's not going to harm your quilt. It will be A-okay. Have you ever done that, Becky?
I actually do that all the time on large embroidery projects that I'm doing, where I'm going to embroider many panels or different hoopings, and they already have batting in them and stabilizer. And then I will clip that to make seams lie flat, and it works great. To, but not through. Yes, that's what we do.
Yes, I like that. To, but not through, for sure. All right, so when you're done with that, all you'll do is you just go ahead and add the red strip on top. All right, and then you're going to take one of your black and white strips and add it along the bottom. Okay, and then you'll have the bottom of your skyscraper complete. Again, let me show you what it looks like right here. You see it all done right there. So again, you've got stripes down here, your stars, and then the red little sashing right there. All right, any questions? So far, so good? So far, so good. All right.
When I sew pieces like this, where this is just a plain strip, and this has all of the little seams where I can see the tips of the stars, I will sew with the plain strip to the bottom. It might feel like you want to sew it like this, but again, I don't leave anything to chance. And so I will sew with the plain strip down. You can see the tips of the stars, and
then you can kind of maneuver that needle a little bit, right?
I'm not that skilled with this machine in sewing. Machine is definitely small.
Yeah, but if you, but Becky, you're right. If you can see the tips of your stars, then you can really guide your seam allowance to make sure and not cut off those tips. You have a little bit of wiggle room. Not a ton. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't have a ton, but you do have some. And I will say at the end of the day, sometimes we get so caught up on perfection that we end up not enjoying the process, and it just becomes a source of frustration for us. And that's not what you want when you're sewing. So I want you to really think about, you know what, if the very tip of my half square triangle is cut off, is it really the end of the world? No, it really isn't, right? So we have to learn to accept sometimes what it is. All right, friends, let's go ahead. We are doing, again, you're going to be doing 3 stars. And the next part of our instructions is that, let's see, I'm on page 2. We've added the border. Okay, so now it's time to add the wording. And I wanted to go over that with how this is done, because this is actually kind of an interesting way of talking about this, because if you notice on the pattern, there are actually 3 M's, and it's not that we did a typo. We did that on purpose, and I'll show you why here in just a minute. So we're going to cut out summer is. We're going to be doing a fusible applique. All right. So for those of you who have done fusible applique, this is going to be a review for you. If you've never done fusible applique, by all means, please let me know any questions that you run into. I've already cut out the word summer here just for purposes of this, but I'm going to go ahead and cut out is, and then I'm going to show you the tip on why we have 3 M's in summer on your pattern. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, let me grab my words, is right here. All right, and we've also included buttons in your kit for the ... But if you would rather not have buttons on this, you could even just cut out the ... from that. All right, so you're going to notice something interesting on here, and that is that we also put this in reverse already for you. So the important thing is if you are doing an applique, the traditional method of applique with a sewing machine and Fusible on it, especially if you're doing letters, you've got to draw them in reverse, or else they're not going to look correctly, right? On the finished project, they're going to be backwards. Has that happened to any of you out there ever? It's happened to me for sure. And so the nice thing is we've kind of taken out that part of the work for you, and it's already in reverse. So that's why it looks kind of a little ski-wampus, but it does say the word is. So with heat and bond, there is a fusible side, which is a bumpy side. You want that to go down, and you want the paper side to be up. I'm going to go ahead and just trace this with a pencil. All right. And we want this traced as one word because this is done in cursive.
Chris, did you already sew the bottom of the stars? Did you already?
I sewed, I did not add the red and the black and white stripe. Is that what you're asking? Okay. Yeah, no. I just, for purposes of just time, I just said, go ahead and add those on. Okay, so here we have this drawn out, and I'm going to do what is called a rough cut. Now, it's important to know, and again, this is especially for those of you who are brand new to how fusible applique works. You do not want to cut directly on the lines of the word is. You want to make sure that you do what's called a rough cut. You are going outside of the letters, all right? So, and the reason for that is because once this is fused onto your fabric, then you cut directly on the line. So I'm going to take it over to my ironing station here and cut this out. And this is just the black fabric that's included. There's no right or wrong side on this because it is a solid. However, if you're ever doing fusible applique, just remember this. The fusible applique goes on the back of your fabric, not on the front. That's another don't ask me how I know kind of story, right? Been there, done that. All right, so you just let that cool. You notice I just took an iron to it quickly. It's now adhered to it. Now I'll bring it over to my little cutting area, and I'm going to cut directly on the lines. This is where Becky was saying if you have like a Cricut or something like that, some kind of electronic cutting machine, those become really nice right now. But this is going together pretty easily too. So do you see how I'm cutting directly on the line now? So that's going to give a nice finish to the edges where you will avoid fraying. If you had tried to cut your Fusible directly on the line before it went on and then you tried to cut it out, you would have a lot of fraying and it would be very, very difficult to cut out. I remember I've shared this story before, but years ago when I was teaching a beginner's class on Fusible applique, I felt so bad. There was one gal in my class that had done quite a bit of homework beforehand, thinking that she was going to be super prepared for class. And oh, she certainly was. However, it wasn't, I just felt so bad because she hadn't realized that, oh, by the way, what I'm doing here, I should explain. This is the opening of the S, so I'm going to just fold it in half and do a little cut so that I can get my scissors in there. So what happened was she didn't realize that you don't pre-cut everything. Oh, there we go. Okay, hold on, let me get that. And so she had done all of her appliques. She pre-cut all of them, all of the heat and bond. Oh, she was devastated when she learned that that's actually a step you don't want to be doing. And so for the next 30 minutes, I just helped her cut the rest out because I just felt so bad. Others had moved on, but I'm like, no, it's okay. We got this. We got this. We can get this traced and cut out again. So just something to remember. Don't cut it out until it's fused and it's now ready to cut out. Okay? All right, let's see. I'm looking at things. You can also print out on freezer paper to apply to your fabric and cut. Yes, you can do that. In fact, Kathy, we are going to be doing the freezer paper method here in just a minute when it comes to the watermelon. But I don't want to do it for these letters because there's a lot of twists and turns and curves on these letters. And the freezer paper is not going to stay as well as we want it to. It's going to have a tendency to fall off with a lot of handling. So that's why I prefer using the heat and bond on this one, and we will use freezer paper on the watermelon. But yeah, I mean, that is a great suggestion though, especially for, smaller items for sure. Okay, Dorothy is wondering, Becky, are you going to show us how to use the scan and cut and make this an embroidery?
I am, I've changed out to my embroidery foot, and now it is stitching the placement line for me. I can move my camera so you can see what is going on. It's everywhere, y'all. So I'm using a dime magnetic hook, and this big 10x6 for the there or the and
I think Becky, I think you might be cutting out a little bit.
Oh, am I? I'm sorry. Yeah.
There we go. That's better.
Okay. So it's just stitching the placement line for me now for all of those letters. And then it's going to, now it's doing the little hole in the S. So it's going to be exact for me to be able to place the letters. Now my letters have heat and bond light on the back, just like yours. And I have a lot of video. For those of you who are new and are unfamiliar, my name is Becky Thompson, and I have the YouTube channel Power Tools with Thread. And I am all about using machines to the max of their ability and the technology that we can use. And so there are many pieces of software that do what I do. Did mine in Brilliance Stitch Artist too, but most of the high-end embroidery software has the ability to be able to import a vector graphic, which is what you get when you scan in. I use the Brother Scan and Cut and to scan in that image. So now let me show you what I've got. Here is my outline, and I have no show mesh in the hoop. Okay. And now I'm just going to iron on the instead of having to sew it on. I'm just going to, the embroidery machine is going to finish with a blanket stitch all around the letters. So in kind of tight quarters here, guys. And so I'm just, I'm going to try to move this. What I'm doing. I cut it all out. Yes, you guys, I do this because I'm lazy. That's why.
Rhonda was asking if you could use Misty Fuse instead of Heat and Bond.
Okay, I've not been successful with Misty Fuse.
Okay.
I think that if you use Misty Fuse, because I tried it one time and they had Misty Fuse for me to use, and I was grateful that I brought my own Heat and Bond light because I ended up using that. If you use Misty Fuse, you may want to use some spray adhesive behind it on the mat. And the reason is if your mat is too sticky, it will pull the Misty Fuse off because it is too light. If the mat is not sticky enough, it needs like some 505, like you have, Chris, or maybe some Selfie K2000 to help the fabric hold on to the mat. I even have used Scotch tape on my mats. I'm a whatever works kind of girl. I was in the military for 20 years, and we make do and make it work for us. So all I'm doing now is making sure that my fabric is being ironed right inside of the placement line. It's just like a regular embroidery project that you would do for applique, where it gives you a placement line and a tack down. Well, Embrilliance doesn't give you the tack down, but because the fabric was cut, so I had to trace just like you did. And the reason you want to trace is because when commercial patterns are printed, they are printed with many layers. Digital images, those commercial patterns are made with layers, whether they're using Adobe Illustrator or whatever it is that they're using to create the shapes themselves. Well, I can't see those layers. The Scan and Cut can. And so you'll get all kinds of wonky stuff unless you, so I just use a Crayola marker. And then when I scan that in, the machine only sees one line, and then it will work just fine. All right.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Thanks, Becky. That looks good. That looks really good. All right. There we go. Yeah. It looks like you've got a few questions about Scan and Cut, and perhaps we can even go over that some more in depth a little bit later in the class. But yeah, that is great. Judy says she would just embroider right onto the project. Yep, you can do that too. Absolutely. All right, so let's take a look back at what I was just drawing on with, if you were doing heat and bond. I remember when I said that you've got some, and then here's myrrh, but it's got 2 M's, so we've really got 3 M's. The reason for this M, this third M, is for placement. So what I did was I first went ahead and traced that, and then I'm going to use this and line it up because I can see through it. Whoops, let me pull this back a little bit. Okay, there we go. All right, so because I can see through this, see how you can see through my letters? Now I can place this M on top of this M underneath, and now I can continue my tracing. Does that make sense? So kind of a nice little theme that our pattern designer put together for you so that you can have perfect placement. All right.
If anyone is watching me, I switched out to a black bobbin that I saw a little bit of the bobbin thread coming through over to the top. I don't want to have to deal with that. So I just switched out to a black one, and it's going to look a lot better.
Okay, good to know. All right, so you can see summer is out. I had a line there. That doesn't mean I'm going to cut it. I'm just going to kind of black that out so it reminds me, don't cut that, Chris. You now have it all as one word. All right, so easy peasy. Any questions? Yes, Jennifer loves the idea that we have the extra M so it can be lined up. Thanks, Jennifer. I agree. I think it is very, very helpful when it comes time to lining up. So when you look at that, that is the reason why. All right, so we have summer is, which is ready to be put on. Oh, I should mention that what I've done with the background is I have already lined it with Kimberbell's Fusible backing, which I absolutely love. So I know many of you use it. You love it. It is basically a woven interfacing where you're going to see kind of a little bit of a shiny side. That's your glue side. All right. And then you put it on the back of your fabric. It's going to still give it some nice drape, but it adds a little bit of more heaviness to the fabric. So it's going to be so much nicer when it comes to avoiding puckering. Whether you do this by sewing machine or embroidery machine, this is definitely one of those things you're going to love, love, love. All right, Lynn asked me if there's a reason why I used a pencil to trace and then a black marker. No, the reason why I used the black marker was just to have it show up better on camera. That's the only reason. But you certainly could do it by black marker, even if, if you're at home. If it's going to be on the Fusible heat and bond, you don't have to worry about that because that's the paper. It's not going to be on the fabric. All right, so you can take a look here at summer, and I actually like to cut. I like to cut everything out first. I like to get everything pieced and all of it done before I add my words on here. So I'm not going to press them on yet, but just as a way of showing you what's happening right now, what part of this we're in, I wanted to be able to show you that that's going to go on. But again, I'm not going to do anything with it. Meaning pressing it on or sewing it on until all of my pieces have been put together. All right, let's see. Dee said she quilted the backing with Kimberbell's new watermelon quilting design. Yes, yes, yes. It's adorable. And I think that's how I'm going to do this next one too, Dee. I think I'm going to do that same background quilting design with clear blue tiles, which I think is going to be kind of fun. All right, so let's move on. We have summer is right here at the top. And now it's time to do these fun watermelon. And this is where I'm going to use freezer paper. And some of you may be curious as to why am I using freezer paper on this? why aren't I just using Heat and Bond Light, right? Well, the reason for that is because we're going to use the freezer paper as a template for the watermelon slices. And then the watermelon slices are actually sewn together. So they're pieced together by sewing machine. And we wouldn't want to have the heat and bond in those seams. Does that make sense? So therefore, we don't need the heat and bond. I'm going to show you a different way of adhering it to your background instead. So I have already pieced together the large one, and I'm going to take you through how to do the small one today. So this one's about ready to go, but there's one thing that I want to point out that I'm going to now fix. And this is going to be on everyone's. In fact, even in the directions, it says, let me pull it up so I can make sure that for those of you following along, let's see, trace watermelon with right size sketch. Okay, I'm on step number 13. And it says to trim the top straight edge of the large watermelon if needed. Now, when I first read that, I thought, well, how will I know if I need it? And then I pieced it together and I went, oh, yeah, I know exactly what they're talking about. So I want to make sure and show that to you today as well. All right, so if you take a look at my large pieced watermelon, you're going to notice that I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance here at the top, which is perfect if I were actually sewing this onto another piece, right? And you had a 1/4 inch seam allowance, now you'd have perfect points right here up at the top. But because I'm actually appliquing this onto the background, I don't need that 1/4 inch seam allowance there. So really simple. All I'm going to do is take my ruler and just trim it off. No big deal. So you're trimming off an approximate 1/4 inch. And now I have nice points there at the top. Okay, so that's what that means in those instructions. Now, one other thing I want to point out, and if you've got yours in front of you, I want you to make this little correction on your pattern. And if you don't have a pattern in front of you, just make this little note that on the large watermelon number 4, just reverse these two things. This should say top edge. This should say seam edge. So it's not a huge deal. You'd notice it as soon as you cut it out. But this, if you're like, wait, this isn't going the right direction, we made a little oops here. So just go ahead and switch those two around. Again, this one, I'm on large watermelon 4. Just do an arrow that switches those words out. This is the seam edge. This is the top edge. Okay? All right. Everyone good there? Let me know if you've got questions. All righty. So what do we do with the freezer paper? Well, if you've never used freezer paper in quilting before, let me point out to you, this is a very hard to find item in a quilt shop. However, it's not so hard to find at the grocery store. You've probably noticed this before. This is just Reynolds kitchen freezer wrap. You'll usually find it sometimes in the meat section or sometimes over by like the Ziploc bags and stuff like that, okay? This is awesome because I use this all the time when it comes to creating templates, all right? If I need to trace around something, that's what I'm doing. I am tracing around or even cutting around with a template because I don't have to cut out another piece of cardboard and draw it around. You'll see here what I mean in just a minute. So let me go ahead and grab my little piece. Now with freezer paper, you have a paper side and you have a shiny side. And the cool thing about this is that I can actually iron this onto my fabric, onto the front, onto the back, it doesn't matter. Use it for my template and then peel it off and there is left with no sticky residue. All right, you won't see anything like that. And yes, Kathy said she likes the printer version. They do have printer versions and a lot of quilt shops, they do have like an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, which can be very helpful as well. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work on the small watermelon right here. So small watermelon 1 and small watermelon 2. You've got the seam edges going where they need to be. And I'm going to just trace these real quick with this little marker. You can do it with a pencil. It doesn't matter. Okay. And then this one. And I'm also going to just do a little X on the side that tells me it's a seam side. So you'll probably be able to naturally get it because it's like a puzzle just comes together. But if you don't, it's nice to have a little, reminder of like, okay, these are the two seams that go together, right? So I just put a little X there. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut these directly on the line. So don't get it confused with freezer paper, or don't get it confused with heat and bond light, I should say, where we don't cut it on the line. You can cut it. Well, you know what? Let me tell you this. You don't have to. I'll show you both ways. This one you have a little more wiggle room with. So I'm going to do a rough cut of this one as well. So maybe rather than confusing you, you might go, okay, I'll just remember I'm going to cut outside the line, and that's fine. All right. So then we've got lots of beautiful reds in your kit. Patty says she's amazed at how straight my lines came out. Oh, you're very nice, Patty. I don't know. All right. You're sweet. Okay. So let's go over here to the ironing. And again, you've got plenty of fabric here to work with. So you can probably get 2 watermelon slices out of it. Heck, make a little watermelon pillow while you're at it, right? Okay, so in fact, I don't like to waste fabric, so I'm just going to put it right up to the far edge. And then I'll take my second piece and do the same thing over here. So you can see one, I did a rough cut. The other one, I went straight on. It really won't matter on this one. All right. Okay, now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to do a straight cut. And maybe that's why, Patty, it's not as important that your lines are straight when you're doing the marker, because I know that I'm going to get a really straight line when I use, the rotary cutter and the ruler with it. So I'm just going to line my ruler up on the straight line and do a cut, just like that. And do it on this opposite side, like that. And now I'm going to go around the curve. If you didn't feel comfortable doing it with your rotary cutter, you certainly could do it with your scissors as well. But I'm going to go ahead and use my rotary cutter and just trim right there. Easy peasy, right? And again, the nice thing about using freezer paper is that when I lift it off, it essentially does come off, no problems at all. And again, there's no stickiness to it. All right, so I'm going to keep that one there, and let's go ahead and cut out this next one. And while I'm doing that, Becky, do you have something that you want to share on how you did your watermelon slices?
Well, just made a copy and laid it on top of the fabric and cut around it with a rotary cutter. I know the picture said freezer paper. I didn't have any, so.
Oh, well, that works. Absolutely.
It did work. It worked great. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I like about using the freezer paper method too is that, let's say I had multiple slices of watermelon, for example, you can actually reuse the paper over and over and over again. So I don't have to cut out several templates. I could use the same template, and you'll see how I do that when it comes to doing the daisy, because that's how I did my daisy as well. And it was so handy just to have the one template, press it on, do my little trace, take it off, put it right next to it, do my little trace, and it worked out really well. All right, let's go over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to put these two sides together, all right, where my two X's are. Cindy asked, how does it stick to the freezer paper? It is actually sticking by the because of the iron. Isn't that cool? So the iron just kind of,
it adheres.
the waxy side.
It does a little adherence, but it does not leave wax on your fabric at all. It's great.
Right. I know. Isn't it amazing?
It is.
I just love that. Okay, so I'm putting right sides together along those edges right there. And now I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down that side. Yeah, I have to tell you, whenever something says you need to have a template for it, I don't have that plastic lying around, but I've got freezer paper, and that's what I use. Okay, trim my threads. And now I'll come to press this open. So I'm going to put some heat on it. So I'm setting the seam, and I will press it to one side. Now, another thing you could do if you wanted to, you could certainly open up the seam as well. But on my one watermelon, I just had them all the seams to one side, and it lays. I think it will lay just flat, just fine. But if you want to have that extra measure of flatness, how's that for a term? Then pressing your seams open isn't such a bad idea. Okay. All right. I've got a couple little dog ears to trim, so I'm going to cut those off real quick. Boom and boom. All done there. All right. How are we doing out there? Does anyone have any blocks or any pieces of this all done that you want to show to the camera? We'd love to see. Okay, Eric's going to scroll through here and see if anyone's got anything done yet. Am I going too fast? How's the pace? Are we okay? All right. Some may be sleeping even. All right. Margot says it's good. Great pace. Okay.
Thread. White bobbin. I am going to sew on the watermelon pieces with the raw edge applique.
Are you?
I'm going to use some spray adhesive to and that will it'll stay in place, because pins can get bumpy, a little.
Yes. Yes, they can get in the way for sure. Okay, I'm going to lay this out now, and I'm going to start looking at pressing this in place, okay? Because now that I have those two big watermelons, I do want to talk about some tips for doing machine applique. And Becky mentioned that she likes to use like a 505 spray adhesive. You could definitely do that. You could do pins, but I agree with Becky. That's not my favorite method of adhering to it. I've got some 505 spray adhesive right here that I could certainly use, but today I'm actually choosing to use Quilter Select Free Fuse. Have any of you ever used this before? This is an awesome, awesome product as well. It is a semi-permanent fusible powder. Okay, so I'll show you how that works. And, very helpful for like if you're basting a quilt and, to baste your layers. But I will use it a little bit on appliques like that. I don't cover the entire applique with it. I just do a little bit of sprinkling, and then it will just fuse on just enough to hold everything in place for me, especially for those of you who don't love the smell of like a spray adhesive. I know that can get to a lot of people. then this is a great alternative. Or you could even use like a little glue pen or a glue stick or something and do a few spots here and there, right? Yes. Someone asked, is that like Bonatch powder? Yes, it sure is. Okay, so let's see. Donna says she has the powder, but she tends to get it where she doesn't want it. Yeah, and that could definitely be the case too. I would only use it on big pieces like the watermelon. I wouldn't use it on the lettering, right? And that's why we have the heat and bond on the lettering. All righty, so let me go ahead and grab all my stuff here. Got the watermelon, got the letters, and now I'm gonna come over here and we're gonna start playing. All right. So my letters first, I'll go ahead and peel back the heat and bond. I just noticed that I'm not seeing a shiny side yet. So this may need a little more iron. So the thing you want to pay attention to is if you don't see when you pull it off and there's not a shiny side, that means that you need to press it a little bit longer. Let me start over on this end and see how we're doing here. Oh yeah, it's fine here. I must have just missed a spot over there. Okay, so there is a shiny side on the back of these letters, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the paper. Very, very carefully. All right. There we go.
I'm doing my stitching of the watermelon wedges using a zigzag stitch at a 2-point stitch width. And I'm making sure the outside of the zigzag just right on the edge. I have to slow
Okay,
it down.
Becky, when you turn, your audio goes out.
Oh, that's because my microphone is behind me. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay. I just went, oh, you do what? What was it that you said you do?
So I sew my watermelon wedges on. I'm using a zigzag stitch, a narrow zigzag with a 2.5 width. And I'm just making sure that the very outside point of the zigzag is right at the edge of the fabric, the red fabric.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and press this on. So also when you're pressing your letters on, you want to make sure and not be, ironing this word. You want to actually give it just a nice firm press for a few seconds. And I'm not sure where the dot of my I went, but I'll find it and see. Or maybe Abby. Abby is on it. I'll tell you what, when I talk about people who are on it, that's Miss Abby over here. She's like finding me a foot pedal. She found me the dotted I. Hooray, Abby. I know. She's for hire. If anyone needs her to find, anything in their sewing room, she's your girl.
So when I do embroidery, I keep everything I need in a little clear tray right next to my machine. I have all of my snips, all my curved scissors. I have my Kimberbell tape dispenser. I have everything that I need here. And I make it a habit now when I put my scissors down, they go back in the tray all the time. Otherwise, I will look for them everywhere.
Yep. So true. So true. So you notice I just did a little sprinkling underneath there. And again, it's really, for me, it's just about kind of holding it in place. this is just another alternative to using the spray adhesive. If spray adhesive's not your thing, this is a great, just an option. Okay. So obviously it's not going to get the very edges.
I just sewed mine on, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So this has Selfie KK2000 on the back. I like that because it doesn't give any kind of overspray, and it worked out beautifully.
Nice. Yeah. Another thing you could do is you could also, you could take heat and bond, like you could trace your watermelon onto heat and bond and now, fuse that onto the back as well. So there's lots of different options you could do here. When I especially love the free fuse, it's when I'm trying to base layers together of fabric. Because then you don't really have to worry about where it's going either, right? But that's a very nice bond going on right there. Okay. There we go. It's coming together nicely. All right, my friends, let's go ahead and talk about, let's talk about some tips that we might have for doing blanket stitching, or, Becky talked that she likes to do a zigzag stitch, which you absolutely could do. Oh yes, Kathy Knapp said Roxanne's glue based it. Yeah, or Jill Lily's glue that we love too. Lots of different things for sure that you could do. All right, so let's go. Oh, let's see. No, Cindy, the pattern is not found in the club. No, this one is for sale on our website at mygirlfriendsquiltshop.com. Okay, and yes, by the way, we have kits, but we also have just pattern only. If you're interested in that, you go, I want to use my own fabrics. That's totally fine too. We've got just the download pattern only too. All right, let me talk for just a minute, real briefly, about blanket stitching and zigzag. So Becky said that she likes to zigzag. So what she's referring to, let's go ahead down to the table in front of me and get that on there. Maybe I'll use a different color marker so you can see a little bit better. So I'm just using this as an example here, but this would be the top edge. So what Becky's doing is she's basically doing a zigzag stitch over top. And Becky, do you like using the same color thread as your fabric?
I do. Most of the time, yes, I do.
Yeah, that's what I do as well. Years ago, when I started applique, years ago, everything was always done in black. Black thread was the way it was. Now you see a little bit more people going towards the same color thread, matching the thread with the fabric. I'll tell you, one of the nice things about doing it that way is that if you make a mistake, you're pretty okay. Like, you really don't notice it as much as if you had done it in black thread, right? So a small zigzag stitch, Becky does hers at a 2.5. I love the look of blanket stitching, and I love doing it on my sewing machine. So just a little quick lesson for you. Some of you may have heard me talk about this, but we have when it comes to doing the blanket stitch, you basically have a jump and a jump and a bite. The bite goes into the applique. And I always like to think of the applique as being an apple. I'm taking a bite into the apple, right? So I go jump, jump, bite into the apple, jump, jump, bite into the apple. Now that could be one setting on your sewing machine. Another setting could just be a jump and a bite back, jump, bite back, jump, bite back, jump, bite back, right? So you can, a lot of machines will have different variations. So you need to play around with your machine and find the variation that you like the best, the one that you feel the most comfortable with. Hi, Miss Sable. She says, jump, jump, bite. That's right. She knows my terminology here. It is jump, jump, bite. I prefer the jump, jump, bite, where I like to have 2 jumps and a bite, because it actually helps me to navigate around my applique pieces a little bit easier. But again, try out different ways that your machine does it and find the machine, or find the option that you feel most comfortable with. It may take some practice. It may take a rhythm of you getting into a rhythm, right? Getting into a rhythm of what feels good, what feels natural, what feels comfortable to you. So if I were to take this to my machine, which I will here in a minute, but I want to draw it out so that you can kind of see what's happening before we go underneath the needle. The goal here is not to be out here, right? Do you see how that blue line is not matching up with the black, with the outline? All right. That blue line is way off. And so what ends up happening is you're going to see background there of white, and you don't want that. You want it to butt up right against the edge of your fabric. So you've got to keep your needle position right along the edge of the fabric, and you go a jump and then a bite and back, and a jump and a bite and a back. And then that way you don't see the background. You don't have any white coming through, right? And then we get here. Now we get to the tip and we're going, oh, great. What do I do? Where do I turn? How do I do this? Right? We don't want that needle or that thread to go out into center field. This is what you do. You make sure that the needle is always in the down position on the outside of the fabric before you ever turn the fabric. So I'm going to take that bite and I'm going to stop before I'm going to take that jump, I should say. I'm going to take that jump and I'm going to stop before I take the bite. So what I do is my needle is in the down position, and then I turn my fabric. I turn my project, and I don't begin sewing until that is turned. And now what is the next stitch that's going to happen? It's going to be a bite, and it's going to go right down in the middle. And then it's going to go back, and then I'm going to go back to jump, bite back, jump, bite back, jump, bite back, jump, bite back, and so forth. Okay? So that's the kind of the idea that you want to be in. On this one, we don't have any curved edges we have to go around because the curves are going to be covered by rickrack. However, just as a side note, if you are doing curves in the future on any project that you're doing, well, I guess I should say we would be doing curves on the lettering, right? Because I'm actually going to blanket stitch my lettering too. Don't worry, I won't take the time to do it during class, the whole thing, but I will show you a little bit of it. And I have lots of curves there, right? So what do I do when it comes time to going around a curve? Well, let's take, let's pretend that we are appliquing this, which we're not. But when I go around, I have this in my sewing machine. My needle's coming here. I go jump, bite, back, jump, bite, back, jump, bite, back, and so forth. And now I'm starting to get to this curve. So what I do is I make sure my needle is down before I ever turn, and it's on the outside. We always want to make sure it's on the outside background of our fabric. If you were to turn it too soon, if you were to turn it while that needle was in this position, in the applique position, what's going to happen is you're going to have a stitch that looks like that. Those I like to call little alligator bites. Alligator bites mean no bueno. We don't like alligator bites in our applique stitches, right? It doesn't look as nice. And the reason for those alligator bites is because we've turned too soon, and we've turned before it was in the outside position. So if you remember anything else, if you don't remember anything else, or do remember this, is that you always want your needle in the outside position before you ever turn. Then when you turn, it's going to perfectly line up. Okay, so I hope you find that to be helpful. Do you have anything to add to that, my friend?
I uh, I'm very bad at blanket stitching. I love the way you describe the alligator bites and jump. What is it? Jump. What? I can't remember.
Jump, bite.
Sorry. Jump bite. Yeah.
Yes.
That I have pretty much perfected this process of letting the embroidery machine do the blanket stitching.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Yep. I totally get that.
So many hours in the day, right? Lots to do.
That's
But
exactly right.
I just love that and look at applique and say, oh, okay, I have an embroidery machine. Maybe you have an embroidery arm for your sewing machine and you haven't even used it yet. So
Sure, yeah.
I've got a lot of videos on the channel showing you how to do. Hey, do you see I'm wearing my girlfriend's quilt shop t-shirt?
I love it. Yes. Thanks for repping.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Chris, did I meet you at market or the show? I can't remember which one it was.
Oh, I believe it was the show.
It was the show.
It was
Okay,
the
so then
Houston
it was
show.
I met at market. I was talking about that this morning, and I was like, I can't remember which one I saw. It was a year ago. It's been a minute.
Oh, that's great. That is great. I love it. Bren said customer service just gave you a cheer. Yeah. Oh, the Lego. That was a hit for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I have it right above my piecing machine. So you stitch with me every morning.
Ah, yeah. I love it. Right next to you. Hey, Eric, do we have a camera on the machine itself on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to do a shot of how I'm going to set up this blanket stitch. Let's see. Why are we cutting the flower petals on the seam? We're not quite to flower petals yet, so we'll get there here in just a minute. We're almost there. Okay, so I'm on my screen right here on my machine. I am working today on the Baby Lock Altair. I'm going to do, remember how I said I like the jump bite? I'm going to do that for those of you who have a Baby Lock or Brother. It's Q12. But again, all machines are a little bit different. Just find the one that looks like 2 dashes and then jump over. This one's a little too small for me, so I'm going to bump up my length to a 2.5 and my width I like to have at a 3.5. So again, everyone does theirs a little different. They like it a little different, but this is kind of my go-to setting. So you may want to write that down. Is if you're doing blanket stitching, my personal preference is a length of 2.5, my width at 3.5. So you can see here what that blanket stitch is going to look like. Now I'm going to go ahead back over to underneath the needle. I am going to do a reinforcement stitch at the beginning, all right? Just to hold those stitches tight and in place. And now I just go ahead and follow along. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. There we go. Okay, I'm getting close to the corners, so I'll just kind of slow it down a little. And then boom, I'm on the outside position, my needle's down, and now I'm going to turn. Okay, I've turned, and now I can keep going. So again, remember, on the watermelon, all you have to do is the sides and along the top, or yeah, the sides on this one. And on the big watermelon, all you have to do is the top. Okay, I'm going to do a reinforcement stitch. Cindy's asking me, what foot am I using? I'm actually, Cindy, I'm actually using the J foot. But let me recommend this foot. If applique is something that you find a little tricky, especially an open toe foot like this is really awesome. In fact, I will definitely use this foot, the open toe foot, when it comes time to doing my applique on my lettering. On these watermelon, it's really easy for me. It's just a straight all the way down, but I've got lots of curves on the letters. So I'm definitely going to be using the I foot. Let's see. No, I don't know what it's an open toe foot. There's no letter on there. But the open toe gives you a great visual. Okay, so I'm finished with one watermelon, and now I'm going to do the second watermelon. And again, you are going just straight along the top. Again, I'm starting out with a reinforcement stitch, which is just the needle going up and down in the same position. Okay, and then we just rock and roll.
So for those of you who are embroiderers, I am using the needle plus minus button, and I jump ahead to do all of the placement stitches first. And now I'm then I iron down the dot above the I and the three little periods, the dot, dot, dot. And now I did all the placement lines first, all of the ironing at one time, and then all of the final blanket stitches. Is there anybody here who watches me and does what I do with this? If you guys would chime in on the chat, that would be awesome.
So you can see here that those blanket stitches are all done.
Becky, hi, yes, love it.
Yay! That's awesome.
So in the time we've been doing this, guys, I have stitched down all of my lettering. Oh, Melody, thank you. I was stitched down all of my lettering. Oh, you're going to be at my Tempe class. That's wonderful. You know, you were lucky to get in. They have sold out. So here we go. So all of my lettering is on, and it has all been blanket stitched down. So a lot of people look at it and they see the computer part and they say, oh, I'm not a computer person. I don't know how to do all of that. You guys, you don't have to be a computer person. Just like a TV remote or your phone, you don't have to know how it works. You just have to know how to work it. And that's what I teach you how to do on my channel. So
there you go.
Yeah. So I'm keeping right along.
Yay, good deal. Okay, so I just want to show quickly on doing the applique around the letters. One thing I would do, let's go to my machine screen. Because these letters are smaller, I'm actually going to change that length a little bit. I'm going to do a 1.8, and my width is going to be like a 2.75. So again, I'm just shortening this because we have lots of curves going on and the letters are much, much smaller. Now I did change out for the open toe foot because definitely this is where, it just makes such a difference in being able to visually see where you're going. So I'm coming here, I go up to the corner, make sure I'm going to take one more bite or one more jump, excuse me. Coming around a curve, so I'm going to slow down. Make sure that as I go around the curve that my needle's in the outside position. Okay, so we just turn this around and just keep going. And again, if you're using black thread, and you make a little boo-boo, it's going to be A-okay. All right. Don't you just love watermelon? Like, it's just one of my favorite things to decorate for the summer. But the funny thing is, I don't love the taste of watermelon. Isn't that weird? Like some people will go, "Oh my goodness, it was so refreshing to have a slice of watermelon." And for me, I think it's just a texture thing. It's just not my thing. But I love the flavor of watermelon. Like, give me a watermelon candy all day long, and I'm here for it. And give me watermelon decorations, but I can't do an actual watermelon slice. Is anyone with me on that? Okay, here we go. Almost done. Oh, I went off. Not a big deal. I went a little off into left field because I was not paying attention there. So all I have to do is just pull that out. I will start. There we go. I'll just start a little bit back, make sure I do a reinforcement stitch. There we go. And now I can continue on. So it is never too late to fix something. Okay, Lynn is asking, Becky, why do you prefer a zigzag?
Again,
It's really just a personal preference.
right. I mean, I'm just doing a zigzag on this one. Sometimes I'll do a blanket stitch. Just to me, it was just trying to keep up with Chris, and that was very easiest to do.
Okay. There we go.
The blanket stitch to me takes a lot of concentration.
There you go. All right. So is done. Is done. Is done. All right, friends. Let's go ahead and I'll finish up summer a little later. But we're going to go ahead and move ahead to talking about ways to add your rickrack trim onto the watermelons. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do, let's take a look at our sample again. You're going to notice that the mini rickrack comes up and over top of the jumbo rickrack. So what that tells us is that we need to put jumbo rickrack on first, okay? And some prefer to put it on later after it's been quilted, and some prefer to put it on now. I'm going to go ahead and save it for later. I'm going to put it on after the quilting, but again, it's entirely up to you. But I do want to share a couple tips I have for this, okay? So when it comes to doing this jumbo rickrack, oftentimes what we can do with regular rickrack, this is a mini version, you can get a medium-sized version, is that you could stitch a straight line using the same color thread as your rickrack, okay? Just stitch that straight line right down the center, okay? And that would be just fine. However, if you did that on the jumbo rickrack, what would end up happening is you would have the sides of that rickrack kind of flaring up, right? And it wouldn't look as nice and neat. So what I suggest is that you use, again, like the same color thread as is your rickrack, okay, in your top thread. You're going to notice that you have an edge. I like to just fold it over. Okay, so now I have a nice clean edge. Now, you could also use fray check on it, but even with the fray check, you're going to still see the little bit of fray, and I'd rather have a clean edge. So I'm just going to just fold it over like that. And then what I would do is take my glue pen. I love this little So Fine glue pen right here. And I like to glue it in place before I go to the sewing machine, okay? Just to make sure that it's exactly where I want it to go, all right? And it's covering over that piece, all right? And so then I would just do a few more dabs of glue, a few more dabs of glue, a few more dabs of glue until it's all the way over. So we have these wonderful glue pens. We also have fabric glue sticks. Both of them work great. And you would just do that along the rind, okay, as the rind. Let's see. And there is enough rickrack in there, jumbo rickrack, to be able to do both. All right. Now, when it comes time to doing the vine here, that small vine, what I suggest is that you draw it on, perhaps maybe with a friction pin, or you could use some kind of erasable pen. Draw the line on first. Be happy with your swirls and your loops. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And then again, take that glue pen, every few little areas, glue it in place, then go to your sewing machine, take the same color thread, and then just stitch it right down the center. All right, Judy has a question. Would it work to use a double needle for the jumbo rickrack? Judy, it would not. I don't believe so, because even with a double needle, it's not that many millimeters apart. Those needles are still very close together. So I think it would look really cool to have a double needle stitching, but you're still going up and down those curves. I think that would be kind of a really neat effect, but it wouldn't necessarily work as going down the center of the rickrack. Okay. Now, I've also seen where some people will still just go down the center, but then they go back afterwards and take a needle and thread and just do it like a few tack down stitches on the edges. So if you didn't feel comfortable with going around all those curves, then that's something that you could totally do as well. So I hope that helps answer that question, and that's a really good one. All right, I think we have one thing left to do, and that is the flower petals, which are so stinking cute, right, Becky?
Yes, they are adorable.
Yeah, love these. And Becky, did you do these on your embroidery machine, or did you do them sewing?
Don't be silly. Of course, I did them on the embroidery machine.
Silly me. What was I thinking?
I did.
Of course you did. That's right. Well, on this one, I'm trying to find my pattern here. Let me go through my papers.
So may I make a little public service announcement, Chris?
Of course.
Okay, you guys, those of you who follow me, you hear me say this all the time. When you create a digital image of a paper pattern, you are not allowed to share or give away or sell that digital image at all, or the embroidery file you might create from it. It's the same thing as you have to respect the intellectual property of the pattern designer and the company that promoted it, or that produces it. So just an FYI, once you create a digital image, it is it's actually against
not yours to give away.
Okay, so
yes,
that's really important.
Thank you for saying that. That is important. So it's still, it's still a copyrightable item.
Correct. Yes.
But for your own personal
digital images. But I do that. Right. I make a lot of Lori Holt's quilts using her So Simple shapes by tracing around them with onto paper and then scanning them in and creating embroidery designs. And I tell everybody, and I have it on every video, that you are not allowed to share those or sell them at all. They are yours.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Becky. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're on the 3-dimensional flower with the petals. Now, some of you may choose to do the applique version, and you certainly could do that. But I think part of the charm of this little quilt project is having these 3-dimensional petals. Don't you agree?
I wish I could do them. They won't turn out nice if I do them.
Are you sure? I don't believe you. Sure. All right, let me show you all how easy they are to do. First of all, again, you would create like a little template. And in this example, I am going to use my freezer paper yet again. And remember when we talked about how that freezer paper can actually be reusable? Well, you're going to see here in a minute exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so I got the flower petal, and it tells us that we're going to cut 12 of them. All right, 12, but actually, we're kind of cutting 24, but not really. Are you confused? let me show you. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace the petal like this. Okay. And I will cut it out directly on the line. I love this next method that I'm going to show you because when it comes time to sewing these together, it's really, really simple using the technique that I'm going to show you today. All right, with this little petal template, I'm going to take my yellow fabric and fold it in half with right sides together. You can see that right there. And so I will cut out 6 of these, which is really going to give me 12, right? And then with my other piece of yellow fabric, I will have another 6, which will give me another 12. But you really are only cutting out 6 at a time. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my pencil. You know what? Actually, I'm going to take my little erasable pen here. Okay, let's come over to the ironing station. And I'm just going to do a quick iron. Okay, again, it's just holding its place here. And then I trace around the petal. And then guess what I get to do? I can lift it up and I am going to press it again and trace around the petal. See how simple that is? Now, when you do this, you do not want to put them right up against each other. You want about between a quarter and a half inch space in between. And the reason for that is because we're actually going to be sewing directly on the line, and then we will cut the petal out afterwards. Okay, so we need about 1/8 to a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the outside of it, and that's why we don't butt them up against one another. Again, you can see just how quickly this goes. I didn't have to pin it because it just presses on with the iron and stays still for me so that I can trace these. All right, now I'm done with that. What I'll do here is on the bottom, you want to keep that open. Do not sew on the bottom. All we're doing is we're sewing around the outside curved edge, just like this. Now, because it's such a small petal and because we're doing curves, what I want to make sure to do is actually shorten my stitch length. All right, so let's come over here to the machine and I'm going to get it into straight stitch mode in the center. And I will come down here and to my stitch length. At default, it's usually like a 2.0, but I'm going to bump it down to a 1.6. Again, remembering that tinier stitches will actually give you better results on the curves, okay? So I will, let's see, I'm going to change out my thread real quick too, because I don't want any of I had black in it. I don't want any of that poking through. So I'm going to use, I'm going to use yellow. You could use white too, but all right. And I'm just going to quickly get this baby all threaded and then we'll begin stitching. So again, remembering that you're not doing the bottom edge, you're just doing around the curves. So I'm going to start, let me show the camera this. All right, so I'm going to start here at the bottom, come up and around, and end at the bottom. I'm not going straight across. All right? Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm also going to do a reinforcement stitch at the beginning, or you can do a back stitch as well. And that way, when I go to turn these right side out, I don't have the seams popping, right? Now, you're also going to notice that it will be much easier for you to go around those curves if you have an open toe pressing foot on, which is what I have on right now. Very helpful. All right. So again, we'll start here and go around. All right. So while I'm doing this, Becky, is there anything you want to add? Whoops, I'm not hearing you, Becky. Maybe she's out for a minute. Okay, so just keep doing this. And then I'll show you how a little tip I have for turning these right side out, because these can be a little bit of a bugger too to turn right side out. Okay. How are you all doing on your petals? Is anyone stitching theirs out at the same time? Okay, Kathy said, I don't think I could have turned them without hemostats and my RNK turning tool. So very true. Hemostats will definitely come in handy here. I'm also going to show you how to use the RNK turning tool to actually not only, press those seams out, but actually to turn it right side out as well. So hopefully you guys will find it helpful. Okay, and we've got one more. April is watching before she completes another project, working on another quilt. Understandable. Sometimes we have to pace ourselves, right, April? For sure. And looks like Tambra is still working on her four-pointed stars. Well, Tambra, that's okay, because I had the luxury of doing a couple of those before today, right? So I was a little bit ahead by prepping and doing two of my stars beforehand. So you're doing great. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and take a look at what just happened. There we go. So what I have done here is, again, I stitch from the bottom up and around to the bottom, leaving that open. I'm going to go ahead and trim along that open edge straight on, but then when it comes to going around the petal, I'm going to trim about 1/8 of an inch outside. Now you could do a 1/4 inch outside as well, but I find that if I do a 1/4 inch, then I've got to do clipping my seams, because of the curve. And I just don't want to take the time to have to clip my curves. So I just go 1/8 of an inch, and it makes it really, really quite simple. Okay, let me go ahead and there's 3 done. Just make sure you don't get too close. You don't want to clip your stitches, right? These are so, so cute. Whoops. There we go. Two more. And if you don't get to it this project this summer, there's always next summer, right? Or we hope you've learned something new today. All righty, there we go. Okay, so those are all cut out. Now I'm going to use one of my favorite tools, which is the R&K turning tool. Oftentimes we will use this to poke out corners, right? We're all used to poking out corners on our projects and bags and so forth with this ball-pointed metal turner. But actually, another thing you can do is I like to just kind of rub these petals in between my fingers to pull it out on the sides. You can see right here. And then that way, I just take the end of my little tool here and just poke it right there, and it just comes right out. Ta-da! Easy peasy. And now I'm going to take, again, the edge of that tool and just make sure and go all the way around. You want to pull all your seams out. You don't want any like tucked in, right? And sometimes I'll do a little, going back and forth a little bit, a little shimmy, shimmy on these petals, right? Just to make sure they're nice and open. Okay, so again, shimmy, shimmy that to get it out. And see, I had a flat petal. Now I no longer have a flat petal. I'm going to go ahead and take my ball-pointed pen. And here's another little secret, is that if you need a little bit more traction, lick your fingers. You can do that too. Okay, and we're just going to poke those out. Okay, so while I'm poking these out, are there any questions? Or Becky, do you have anything you'd like to share?
No, I love that method you use to turn those tiny little pieces. That is hard on my fingers. That's a great tip.
Good, 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 good. Yeah, just get those sides out and then you'll be golden. Tamara says, my petals look perfect. Hope hers will. They will. They will. Trust me, my friend, they will. If you will shorten that stitch length, that will help tremendously in getting these babies done. I promise you that. Let's see. Kathy said, I made my petals last night, but your shimmy shimmy with the R&K turning tool was much easier than my hemostats. Wish I would have waited until today. Aw, thanks, Kathy. But hemostats are awesome too. I love those. Okay, shimmy, shimmy. So this will take just a minute. Any other comments or questions that we have out there? We're almost done. This has been super fun for me today, and I hope it has been for you too. All right, make sure all those are out. See, it just takes a couple minutes is all. There we go. Shimmy, shimmy that. Get all those seams pulled out. And final one, put on a good TV show or something, right? There we go. And you have these done in no time. All right. There we go. All done. Ta-da! Super simple. Okay. Something else that you want to do is we want to pleat the ends of these petals. So in order to do that, I'm just going to fold it in half, like pinching it at that bottom, okay? Just a little pinch. Everyone see that? Just a little pinch, that's all. And then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and just sew across that little pinch. And I'm going to do them right in a row, all right? So let's go ahead to the machine. And I'm going to switch out my presser foot. I'm going to put back the regular one right here. Oh
Chris?
my goodness, Abby was almost on it. She was like, okay, I'm on it. Where's that foot? Yes, Becky.
So before I iron down my petals, I'm going to take the end of the little mini rickrack up underneath and iron it under there. So if anybody's doing it the embroidery way, you want to do that.
Okay, good to know. Yes, good. Definitely a good thing to remember for sure. Does everyone see how I'm just pinching these bottoms? Pinch, little pinchy pinch. That's it. And the last one. There we go. Boom, bada bang. All righty. Look how cute. Ha ha ha. Loving it, loving it. Okay. Oh, I don't see my needle and thread. And I don't even remember if I brought it, actually. So let me just tell you what's going to happen here. All you have to do is take a needle and thread and you just run it through each of the bottom of the petals so that you can pull it tight. Okay? When you pull it tight, that's what gives you that little guy. Isn't he so cute? Love him. Yay, Dorothy! She said she's an embroiderer, not a sewer, but she will do the petals. She loves them. I love that, Dorothy. They really are super simple to make, I promise. So yeah, you do definitely need to just take a needle and thread. Again, you're just going through each one, just one stitch, so that you can pull it nice and tight. And then let me tell you, it's going to turn out a little skiwampus. Yes, that's a word, right? Skiwampus. It's going to turn out a little crazy. And you're going to say, this is for the birds. This is not working, Chris. And I'm here to tell you, I promise you, I thought the same thing when I made it the first time. And then I went, oh, wait a minute, Chris. Be patient. Be patient. It's worth the effort of being patient. And I just kind of played with them and just kind of moved them around. And all of a sudden, here the flower formed. It was like amazing. Absolutely incredible. Okay. So once this has all been sewn together and it's been quilted, then what I'll do is with needle and thread, I will add not only the larger white button, but come on, how cute is that? A second additional little yellow button on top, because that makes it even cuter, right? So those you will add on. You're also adding on, don't forget your little watermelon seeds. Those little babies are going on the watermelon slices, okay? So I used Heat and Bond on mine. Now, some of you may remember from last week's 3 at 3 that Allison and Debbie showed how to make your own buttons with clay. And they made watermelon seed buttons. How cool is that? Right? So if you haven't seen that, you can go back to 3 Things at 3. It's on our Facebook page. We do it every day, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Mountain Time. And we do a different little tutorial each day. And they did the watermelon seed buttons that they made out of clay. And it was so simple, so simple. Teresa said she's making those for her next buttons. Aren't they the cutest, Teresa? They're so fun and they're so easy to do. So Patty said the flower would be cute if you double it. Yes, it sure would. Can you imagine? Let's take a look.
Chris?
Let's take a look, Patty. Yeah.
So I went into the Scan and Cut and I found actually on Brother Canvas, and you don't have to have a Brother machine in order to use Brother Canvas, and it's free. And I found their shape that was in the shape of a teardrop. And then I made it. Yes, I made it to the same size, a little bigger than 3/4 of an inch, a little less than 7/8. And I used 0.77 for the size. And then I converted that into a filled embroidery design. So my watermelon seeds are little filled designs. And that little filled teardrops. And that works really well. Like you mentioned, having the Kimberbell woven on the back of the fabric, because that helps if you're going to embroider and you're going to have little fills. That's definitely handy, and that will prevent any of that puckering. How did I convert it to the fill? Julie, I used Embrilliance Stitch Artist 2. It'll convert a vector graphic into an applique or a regular standard. I just hit the fill. There's one button, literally. I just click, oof. Yeah. Turned it into a fill. And Julie, I think you, if I remember right, your machine, I'm trying to remember, don't you have the Solaris, my friend? If you do, I mean, you've got IQ Designer, which also has a teardrop outline, like Becky mentioned. Oh, you have the Viking Epic. I was thinking it was the IQ Designer. But for those of you who have IQ Designer, that you're able to do those, a lot of those things that she's talking about right on your machine too. You can. Really nice. Brother Luminaire like I do. Correct.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So I just finished the stitch down of my little flowers, and I've got my rickrack in there ready to be sewn down. And I made sure that my petals were that the little hole in the middle is smaller than the 1-inch button that comes in the kit. So
Yes.
it will cover the center.
If you're digitizing that, yes, for sure. For sure.
So cute. I love this.
Isn't it fun?
It is.
Yeah.
Enjoying it.
Good. It really goes together fairly quickly. It's not too bad at all. And someone had asked about what it would look like doubled. I think it would be adorable doubled. I mean, take a look at my project right here. Let's pretend that these buttons aren't on. And if I were to double that up, that would be absolutely adorable, right? Look at that. And you just kind of have them offset. So you have some petals like every other. That would be really, really fun. So, yeah. All right. Well, I think that is all for today. If definitely let us know if you have any questions that we can help with. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions for you, Becky, on as far as the digitizing part of it. But yeah, we're happy to help in any way. If there's any sewing questions, I'm happy to help. Anyway, it's going to be a cute project no matter which way you do it. And I hope you enjoyed learning that, there's options. There's always options of how to do our projects. So it's fun to be able to do that. Let's see. There's lots of questions coming through or comments. I'm going to see if I can get to some of them.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you so much for including me in this, because I have just had so much fun turning this into, since I'm an embroiderer as well as a quilter, I got to do both and incorporate both methods. And it's just a lot of fun. And I can't wait. I'll be doing a live on Sunday at 4 p.m. Central. And this will be up on the wall behind me, all finished. So we will talk about that then. And then also I'll have links back to this video class so that you guys can watch it again if you want. But this has been great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's been a lot of fun. We should do it again.
Absolutely. Right, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. You guys go sew something.
Let me answer one more question real quick. Somebody was asking about the quilting. Yeah, if you want to do the quilting, I mean, on this one, we just did little loops all the way around, but I think on mine, I'm going to use the clear blue tiles, and I'm going to use the new watermelon design from Kimberbell. So I think that should be fun. So
that'll be
anyway,
cute.
And so, yeah, I think it'll be really cute. So we want to see your pictures. Make sure and share your photos with us on social media. And, be sure to tag us. So Power Tools with Thread and my girlfriend's quilt shop. So don't forget, shop is spelled with 2 P's and an E. SHOPPE. So, all right, everyone, have a great rest of your day and keep sewing and keep embroidering and doing all the things that you love. Thanks, Becky.
Thanks, Chris.